Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. It's time for us to think some more about AI and worry a little bit about the things that we have to worry about. And two of them are very obvious. The prevalence of disinformation, the deliberate attempt to confuse us or mislead us, or maybe influence us to vote for somebody that we probably wouldn't otherwise vote for. And this thing called deepfake, which it's a word I didn't even understand until recently, but it refers, as I understand it, to the videos that are being made and posted that are not real. You know, they manipulate the imagery and have people saying and doing things that they wouldn't have. And sometimes this is just entertaining, and sometimes it can be extremely malevolent. And we have to worry about what's going on there. So I have consulted an expert or several people who are doing work on this, and they're going to join me today. Siwei Liu is SUNY, that is SUNY, State University of New York, distinguished professor and a SUNY Empire Innovator Professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. He's also the co-director of or I guess he is the director of the University of Buffalo Media Forensic Lab and the founding co-director of the Center for Information Integrity at the University of Buffalo. He has invited two of his colleagues who work at the Center for Information Integrity, because that is the topic that's on our agenda today. One of them is David Castillo, who is the co-director of the Center for Information Integrity. And the thing I have already been enjoying a conversation with David, because he's a Romance language professor, and his expertise is in Cervantes. So we've been talking about Don Quixote. So welcome to David. Cynthia Stewart is a program manager for the center, so she knows all about what is actually going on the ground there. And my colleague and friend, Leon Kosals, has joined me. He is a Russian who's been living and teaching at the University of Toronto for about 15 years. He teaches in the criminology department, and he's offering a course now on cyber crime. So and he's going to be the research director for Project Save the World, and I thought he should join in on this conversation. So let's plunge right in. I want to say hi to Siwei Liu, who is, I think, the mastermind of a lot of things. Obviously, he's got several different titles here. So, and being a distinguished professor is no small feat. So, hello, Siwei. How are you?
Hi, Meta. Thanks for having me here. Yes.
Give us what you would like them to come away with from this course.
I have a very kind of like typical computer scientist academic journey, but also atypical in a sense. The typical part is, I did my undergrad degree, master degree, both and PhD degree, both in computer science, all in computer science, and go through the formal training of writing programs, understand algorithms, design AI models. That was about 30 years ago, when AI is already a big word back then, but we were mostly talking about simple models. So you can say I kind of see the whole evolution of AI as a technology, starting from something only scratch on paper, all the way to real life system with a lot of impacts these days. The atypical part of my academic career is I actually wander around in many different fields. I started with computer science, but also with a strong interest in mathematics and physics. So I minored in mathematics in college, and I work on projects related with physics. I work as a software engineer at Microsoft before I joined graduate program. So I have a lot of experience writing programs. And then when I started my grad school, my advisor, Professor Hani Freud, introduced me to this topic of digital media forensics, which is a branch of AI or computer science that we use AI models or computer science algorithm to expose media forgeries or manipulations. And you can imagine all this is based on sort of like a workflow and computer programming skills and mathematical models to solve the problem. Then my career path take another turn when I did a 3-year postdoc at New York University with Professor Errol Chimoncelli as a postdoc in neuroscience. And that was actually quite an eye-opening experience for me because I started to work with neuroscientists in wet lab, understand how human neural system works and how perception can be developed, starting from neural signals all the way to, all this, the complicated neural and psychological activities. And then after I started as assistant professor at the University of Albany in 2008, I went back to media forensics and computer vision, but taking all the experience with me. So and once I started, when I started working in this area, it was not a very well recognized field. So people thinking about what is the AI can create some images, looks funny. I can use that to play some.
What year was that when you went back and tried to begin combining these things?
I started in 2008 as assistant professor there. I started working on projects related with media image manipulations with Photoshops. Then around 2017, when deepfakes show up, I started, that becomes my interest as a kind of like intersection between my interest in AI and my interest in media forensics. That's where the two worlds collided together. At the very beginning, when I explain this to people and they say, I mean, it's a problem, but nobody really take this very seriously because back then AI generated images, videos still look, not very good and not a challenge for human to tell them apart, even though it's kind of like a hypothetical risk, but not a real risk.
Can I interrupt you? I want to, in my own mind, pin down when the turning point occurs in the development of AI. Around then, or maybe a couple of years later, people began to be aware that neural networks and computer systems can be very, very similar. And this was a big turning point, wasn't it, when people began to see that the connection that you were already making between neuroscience and computer science was a very important connection. Is that right? When?
Yeah. Well, actually, you raise a great point. I didn't mention when I was a postdoc, 2006. I came to University of Toronto to attend a summer school that is organized by Jeff Hinton, Joshua Bengio, and Jan LeCun, the 3 Turing awardees.
Really?
And the topic of the summer school is a neural system understanding of deep learning. The deep learning was not a word back then, but Jeff Hinton started to work on this deep neural network called Deep Boltzmann machine, and we spent the whole 10 days studying that subject. So you can sort of that's the Hall of Fame of AI. And it was 2006. Very few people actually understand this topic when Jeff Hinton and his colleagues, Joshua and Jan, started this whole, I shouldn't say started, but continue this exploration. And with a strong belief that when we have we will have more data and have more powerful AI models, the neural networks could do a lot more than people have said about it. So I think 2006, you can call this like the beginning of this revolution. And the high peak was around 2012. And then 2015, 2016, I think is another turning point where, previously people use AI models to do predictive works. Like, I want to tell if this is a dog or this is a cat, or whether, tomorrow going to rain or snow. Now they turn this into generative work. This is like if you call like the modern starting the more recent starting time of generative AI. That's the time when the model called generative adversarial neural network was proposed. So it's a neural network model that will make realistic images as photographs.
What that's really the name of the game that you guys are playing now, that the Center for Intelligence,
Yes.
you are trying to be able to say what's real and what's not.
Yes.
Certainly a noble calling. I sure hope you make it.
But it's not as easy as it sounds, though.
I mean, when I get tricked every day, and I get puzzled by not only phishing, people trying to steal from me, but also nowadays things that I see on YouTube that I think are definitely not real, but I'm not sure sometimes. So tell me how that's going and how you go about that.
The algorithm continue to improve, but also I think with the growth of large language model like GPT, Gemini, all of this alike, it become also easier for user to access those systems. So a couple of years back, I want to make a deepfake video. I have to literally get the code, get the code to run on my computer and start, give it enough training data and then start to generate fake videos. These days, most of the time, all you need is an idea in your mind and then access to internet, and you find that service. Write your idea in a piece of text, give it to the AI algorithm, and after a few seconds, voila, your video is given to you. Almost look, perfect. So I think that what have changed is in terms of the quality and then in terms of the accessibility, and both of them combined together give us an increase in quantity of deepfakes coming to us. That's why we start to be a little bit overwhelmed by the number of deepfakes we're seeing. Not only they become better, but also they become a lot more. Yeah.
Well, tell me how you go about it, because I would assume that what you have to do is learn to do it yourself so that you learn how to do fakery, and then you know what to look for when you catch other people doing it. Or does that matter? But your work is really crime detection, isn't it?
Yeah, in a sense, we are interested in expose deepfakes, but basically, well, from the very simple question of if this is real, in this case, some event really actually happened in the physical world and captured by a camera or a microphone, or is actually completely created using AI algorithm. So the first question we usually ask is this real, or this is generated by AI?
How often are you yourself confused about whether you don't know whether it's real or not?
Well, I would say this is a question of moving targets. A few years back, I would say quite easily, none of the deepfakes I've ever seen easily escape my inspection. But these days, I did get caught quite a few times. Not only that, the real videos can be confused with deepfakes. It's actually there are two sides of the same question. To say something fake is fake, or to say something real is real. Now, because the line got blurred, we have more doubts about something's real, and we start to challenge whether that's real or not. And I think this is possibly one consequence of existence of deepfakes, is it blurred the line between what is reality and what is fiction, and in that sense, that becomes more challenging for ordinary users to tell them apart. Yeah.
Okay, well, now I edit all of these shows, and I guess that's kind of a case in point, because if I find something somebody said extremely awkward, or inappropriate or something, I just take it out. I'm affecting the record of reality, right? So I think that's kind of close to what you're pointing to. Is sometimes if they're going to look at my video as a truthful record of what really happened, I would have to say, well, yes, but I did manipulate it. I did take things out. Is that kind of the borderline issue?
Yes, absolutely. I think the issue here is not the technology. Actually, we call it deep. I now these days I tend not to call it deepfakes because when you use the name, it kind of naturally carry a negative meaning in it. I usually call it a more neutral name like AI generated media or AI generated content. In that sense, to say that number one, the same technology creating deepfakes can also be used for something beneficial or innocuous, like what you just mentioned. So our task as a researcher, as a technology researching the counter technology, the purpose is not to determine if this is good or bad. It's just to tell whether by nature this is any AI touch is in the whole pipeline of the media we're seeing. So coming back to your original question, how do we deal with it? Now, we use AI to fight AI. That's like the more effective approach these days. So the idea is we train an AI algorithm by providing hint about whether we have observed or ask AI to automatically discover differences between what is real in real media and what is fake in AI generated media. So the kind of general approach is like X-ray, where in the analogy of X-ray, we're not going to visible light cannot see through human body, but X-ray is just a different way of probing the same object but being able to expose something that we could not see with our naked eye. And then based on that information, a medical doctor can make a diagnosis of a patient. Same thing here. We use algorithm as kind of like an X-ray to see through something that's not clear, not visible, obvious to human eyes or to human ears, but nevertheless, they reflect the statistical differences between a photograph captured in the wild or a photograph created by AI.
Is it possible to identify the degree of use of AI in this or that image? For example, this totally generated by AI, but that image maybe is 30% or 80%. Is it a, I would say, correct question at all?
It is. It is. Actually, it's an excellent point because we say that's the subtlety of calling something real and fake, because we're talking about real and fake almost like a binary black and white distinction. There is actually a spectrum or degree in between them. And what Leonard, the question you asked is exactly one of the, I'll say, technical challenge we have these days is to, to tell different degrees of AI use in an image. So taking for an example, I can take an image and only change a part of it, change the one face in a photograph with multiple people, right? So in that sense, we need finer grain analysis algorithm to say only this region was touched by AI and the rest is real. So the quick answer to your question is this is possible and there are works focusing on that, but compared to the algorithms answering the real fake question, that's a minority.
I would go back to something Siwei said about how the nature of the problem is not necessarily technical, is how that technology is used and whether those uses are problematic. And here is where the mission of the Center for Information Integrity comes in. When in conversations that Siwei, Cynthia, and I have had over the years, it has become clear to us that this is a this is a social technical problem, not a technical problem by itself. So the key here is, are these technologies being used to manipulate people, to lie to people, to misrepresent the world to people? If that is the case, what can we do about it? And here is where, in our conversations, we came up with the notion that while debunking efforts are necessary, the kinds of adversarial AIs that Siwei was talking about, that are able to expose the use of manipulated media, this is what traditionally has been called debunking, red flagging, deepfakes, for example, manipulative deepfakes. We've come up with the notion that those efforts have to be complemented with what we are calling pre-bunking approaches. In other words, preparing people for the kinds of interactions with media that are more likely to happen as they enter spaces such as social media platforms. And this is where the Center for Information Integrity, the fact that we have experts across the fields from computer science and engineering all the way to the art and the humanities, including folks in the medical schools, in law, in media literacy, this is where our advantage comes in, because we can think of ways of helping people understand the type of media environment that they are playing with when they enter spaces like social media. This is also where you need a Cervantes specialist, if I could advocate for my own presence here. It's what, as you mentioned, Meta, is what can be called reality literacy, understanding how the game is played. We talk all the time as college professors, we talk all the time about how the central mission of education is to teach students to think critically, to think outside the box. And the point that I always make as a Cervantes specialist is that in order to be able to think outside the box, you have to see the box first. So this is where we have to include a way of training people to understand their media condition today. This is where the efforts that Siwei has underlined, combined with a larger strategy that has to do with training people to be more aware of the game they're entering when they enter into those spaces like social media, and when they play with the chat box. One of the most interesting developments I've been reading about in recent days has to do with how people are increasingly using chatbots as spiritual assistants, coaches, sort of religious advisors, and as mental health professionals. And it really makes me wonder how this is going to work when these technologies, by and large, are being trained on models that emphasize what we might call the yes man approach.
The what?
Yes man approach. The essentially getting, this is making you feel comfortable by agreeing with you.
Oh yeah.
So how is this going to work when we're talking about spiritual advisors? Which I don't know. I grew up Catholic. Oftentimes, spiritual advisors were adversarial, to say the least, and mental health professionals in therapy sessions. This is, we have now this very real problem of kids who are trusting the AIs they're talking to so much that they become sort of locked up in a world of their own making. So this is, the Don Quixote symptomatology, and that can be very dangerous. We know of cases that in which an AI bot was providing advice to kids on how to commit suicide, without really questioning, the original intent.
Well, I think just from the get-go, you want to say that the therapist is not there to just confirm whatever you came in with believing. You're definitely, the part of the job is to challenge the person to stop thinking the way they're doing. But on the other hand, that's true. You can have all kinds of questions about how real therapists work too, and I've done enough therapy in my life to have some serious doubts about supposedly top level therapists that I wouldn't recommend to my worst enemy. Anyway, but I do have, for example, there's a guy who comes on our global town hall every month, and he runs a program from Croatia for people who are victims of war, who may not just have been a victim, but a perpetrator, and feel guilty about what they did, but they're suffering the long-standing trauma of conflicts. And he has a program to teach people to be what he calls barefoot therapists. He can train us, you and me, to be therapists using the kind of technology that he does, which is mostly listening. I don't know whether he tells people to confirm the beliefs of his subjects or not. But anyway, we're off on a different tack.
I want to say something very quick about your the term you used, confirmation bias, which I believe it's precisely the total opposite of what education should be about. If we're talking about education, the last thing we want is a model that confirms people's beliefs. Self-doubt is an essential part of learning, and we want to emphasize that. So to trust models whose job is essentially to agree with you is not the smartest way to go about it.
Well, are you saying that a lot of these so-called therapists, automated therapists, do that they're really set up to confirm whatever? That would be terrible.
the models, the ChatGPT 4, for example, has been notoriously problematic for that reason, because it was trained specifically to reinforce the user's beliefs, as opposed to, say, contest them.
Well, I always enjoyed GPT-4. I don't like the number 5 at all. It's too wordy, but
that may be why, because ChatGPT-4 was confirming your beliefs.
It was probably. I mean, it was always very nice, extremely polite. I always thought of I defined it as one of my best girlfriends because it was a female. Anyway, we're hijacking this conversation, which I want to get back to how and whether you can really tell whether something is fake or not. And by the way, please, I know that you're reasonable in fuzzing up the difference between fake and non-fake and say it's a continuum, and there's gradations and stuff. But I really think there's a reason to make some sharp distinction. Either this video has been doctored so that it's not selling the truth or not. And for just simple things like, I watch a lot of videos of monkeys. I love monkeys. And they make these monkeys smiling and laughing and crying and doing things that I don't know. I thought I knew a little bit about monkeys, but I really don't know whether monkeys can cry and smile, because the ones I've known never could. Now, so here it is. It's got me really in a bind. I don't know reality from fakery now, because and it's an innocuous thing. And you might say, well, is this being used for malevolent purposes? Well, no. but I still want to know whether it's true or not.
Right. Well, the most recent AI manipulation techniques or synthesis techniques actually can create very highly realistic to human videos. So that's why it becomes hard, especially for a subject where we do not know much. It could become undistinguishable. So that's why I mentioned earlier the algorithm we developed goes for the into the domain where it's not necessarily intuitive human, but more to down to the numbers about the statistical differences between AI generation and the real world event capturing. So think about, I mean, the idea is if something is created, not something is created purely in thin air by an algorithm from data, it must capture some fundamental differences from otherwise something happened in the real world where you capture it with a camera. And there's some fundamental differences there. And what we're looking for there is this reflection of these fundamental differences, but not necessarily intuitive to human eyes and ears. So that's where we can see the difference. Now, the trouble is when we detect those, when the algorithm say, yeah, I think this is a real or this is a fake, the algorithm may not come up with a human understandable explanation. So in that sense, you have to somehow more trust the algorithm decision than a decision come up with a understandable explanation. So that's where I think that's one major factor why the algorithm detection has not really become as useful as it's supposed to be, because we do not trust them very much as we cannot see the differences or understand the differences. But in terms of detection accuracy, I'll say, most of the even for today, I think the detection accuracy in the ballpark. We talk about different kind of detection accuracies here, but if you say, give me 10,000 AI generated videos and let it run through and for the sake of evaluation, also 10,000 real videos you collected somewhere. Let them go through this algorithm, state of art, and tell me how many times you make it correct, how many times you make it wrong. In terms of AI generated videos, I think we're in the ballpark about 80 to 90% of accuracy. So it's not that low. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, it's the human factor coming in here. It's not that we do not have any method to tell the difference between real and fake. It is about whether humans trust that algorithm or humans have the intention to use such algorithm to tell the real or fake. And that's the one of the motivation why I started work with David and Cynthia at the center, because what I realized is we may develop a effective AI generated video detection algorithm, but nobody is going to use it if they do not have the intention to use it, right? We're all very busy. Then in the morning, we open our social media app, we browse through videos and images, and we see something really interesting. Let's say we see a monkey smiling, monkey playing juggles, and that looks really fun. We never really ask ourselves, is this real, right? I mean, especially when we're busy browsing other contents, we're multitasking. So that's where I think the media literacy come in as a foundation for all the technical work. Methods for countermeasures for deepfakes will only be effective and useful when the users already have awareness and the intention to, ask the question. Yeah.
I just want facts. Now, yesterday I did a show with a guy who was talking about what they did in Taiwan. And apparently, what they did was say that they are going to assume that all of the anything that's fake is really meant to be fraudulent and harmful and untruthful and should be disciplined. So they put in a thing that they hold social media platforms, I guess like Facebook, liable $1 million fine for putting up a fake video that isn't labeled there's some sort of license or provenance indication that should be posted that this is a fake. And if they don't do that, they can be fined $1 million. And apparently they have already just about stamped out deepfakes in Taiwan. I don't know whether his account of this was correct or whether I've even reported what he said accurately. But what do you think of that? I'm in favor of doing something like that because I just plain do not want to be lied to. And I consider crying, making monkeys cry when monkeys can't cry, a way of lying to me.
Yeah,
well, I think so go ahead, Siwei. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say I just took a trip in Taiwan about 3 weeks ago, and I totally understand why they do that because online fraud, which is exactly what we did CII target that, is a huge problem there in Taiwan. People there are using Line and WhatsApp a lot more than in the United States, and they do their financial transactions there. I think more extensively than here, and very easily they can be scammed. And almost I went everywhere. There is some slogan says don't trust things you see online because you'll be misled and fraudulent and pay money for something you don't intend to. So they are taking a more strict measure against this because deepfakes amplifies those scams much more effectively. But on the other hand, I'll say it's very hard to if you legalize this based on intention. It's very hard. That's one of the questions that technology will not be able to answer. We can say this is a fake or this is real, but we cannot say this is a fake made for fraudulent purposes. That comes with other context information. So again, personally, I'll say the social media platform need to label if something is clearly AI generated. On the other hand, whether they should be fined for that, that's kind of like, the area because the same technology, I mean, the platform has a responsibility to disclose that. But whether we should trace all the way back to the creator and, penalize them for doing so, that is questionable because just as we mentioned, the same technology could be used for other purposes and not necessarily malicious. Yeah.
Well, but if AI, I mean, let's say Facebook, apparently in Taiwan, they would penalize Facebook, but not the creator. But then to obey the law, Facebook would have to do good detective work. They'd have to hire you.
I want to respond specifically to the issue of how to deal with social media platforms in general, not just Facebook. I think Siwei and Cynthia would agree that the wrong approach would be to penalize the creator of the information, whoever is posting the information. That can be protected under freedom of speech. The issue for some of us is that social media platforms train their algorithms to grab our eyeballs and keep our eyeballs on the screen for as long as possible. And what that means is these algorithms are tasked with figuring out what keeps us on the screen. Anger sells. Anger keeps us on the screen. Sensationalism, lurid images, they all sell. They keep us on the screen. So, which means that in these platforms, that type of content is promoted at the expense of what we might call evidence-based information on the basis that sensationalism sells. So basically, when we follow the money, the question is, are these platforms profiting from misinformation, disinformation? Are they profiting from lies? And that's where I think we could put pressure on, not the users, but platforms that train their algorithms to spread sensationalist content
Would
to
that
profit.
and allow you to charge Facebook for deceiving Meta Spencer if you make a monkey that cries?
I'm not sure if that would be considered sensationalist, but that you make that call. Right? You make that call. But with the extent that that brings us to maliciously targeted disinformation, there is an area there.
Well, it's
where,
not malicious. I mean, people could say it's just entertainment. Sure.
No. I understand what you're saying about the monkey, but when the content is actually manipulating people into voting a particular way, then we have a problem.
Yeah, of course.
So it's also distinguishing between the types of impacts.
Yeah, I don't want that. I want you to actually say, no, you can't do that. You cannot deceive people that way.
One of the projects that the center has undertaken that is now sort of taken on a life of its own is what we called DART, Deception Awareness and Resilience Tools. And it started out as a project under the center, and we built a couple tools that we thought were pretty good. And so we started a nonprofit, DART Collective, to make sure that once that initial research funding that we had gotten from the National Science Foundation, once that was over, that the work would continue. That grant has been terminated, so now it's sort of DART Collective, but Siwei is president of DART Collective. I am the executive director, so there's a whole lot of overlap between CII and DART Collective. One of the tools, so we're trying to teach people how not to get scammed, basically. And particularly older adults. We started with older adults because they are the most highly targeted and they lose the most money to scammers. And it has the greatest impact on their lives because they don't have as many decades to recover from any financial losses. So we started with older adults. And obviously, because Siwei is on the team, one of the things we were always thinking about was how is generative AI used in scams? How do we explain that to older adults so that and how do we explain it and build activities that can help build protective behavior so that older adults stay safe when faced with these AI generated scams? And it was an interesting position because when we started, again, this is a few years ago, the deepfakes weren't quite as good as they are now. And I started to notice a difference between the way Siwei would talk to groups and the way I would talk to groups. Because he would be emphasizing it's not perfect, we can detect them, here's the different ways we go about it. And I would be on the other side going, don't count on being able to detect it because they're getting better all the time. And what we ended up with in building into our tools was a little bit of both. So in order to teach people about deepfakes, we created some. And because my face is all over the DART project anyway, we created some with my face. And which is, tell you what, seeing a deepfake of yourself is a jarring and disturbing experience.
What did they have you showing or doing?
Just talking, just saying things I've never said. And mostly saying things about how the deepfakes work. So teaching, it was nothing harmful, nothing malicious, but we never recorded me saying it. It was, we had the computer do it. And they deliberately had to dumb down the algorithms because we have the teaching section and then we have practice. People can practice detection. And so they deliberately had to dumb down the algorithms because people couldn't tell which ones were fake. So we dumbed the algorithms down a little bit to show people, hey, these are the things to look for. Because we want people to, whenever they're encountering a piece of media, to ask themselves, is it real? And so, and then, so we want them to take that time to go, okay, do the earlobes match? Are the earrings different? Do the reflections in the eyeballs make sense? Does the person have 6 fingers or 3 legs? All of these kinds of things that sometimes show up in bad deepfakes. But at the end, we want them to also just buy that time to go, you know what? There's probably a better way I can figure out if this is fake or not. If I am encountering a video call from my grandchild saying, I'm in trouble, I need you to send money. Well, I can sit here and analyze the image all day long, or I could just call my grandchild. And what we really want is to buy people that time to think, how could I check this out? So our message is sort of twofold. Do interrogate all media to say, does this even make sense that I'm receiving this thing? Especially any media that is trying to get you to take an action, whether giving money or giving away your personal information. Anything that's saying, click here and update your information. Does it even make sense? And how could I check it out?
I guess I'm not media literate, or I'm not reality literate, because I get taken on all the time, and I don't want to have to be responsible for that. I want to have somebody immediately arrested and put in jail if they try to deceive me about anything.
Yeah.
And I know I'm much more, I mean, I was brought up a fundamentalist, so that shows, I think, I have an absolutist notion of morality, but I do. I don't think I should have to call my grandchild to find out things like that. I think that the first thing I should do is call the police and say, who's this guy and what is he doing, and can you go and get him?
Yeah.
But they don't do that, you know. I've been taken in. I've had actually lost money because I've been fooled. But you know, you might as well, you know, not bother calling law enforcement, because there's no way those guys can keep up with the magnitude of the deception going on by phishing experts and stuff.
But I think that's exactly what DART tries to achieve. You know, if everybody has the same kind of mindset as you had, we'll have much fewer of this kind of problem. And you know, the purpose of DART is to infuse that with the general public, especially older adults, so that they will be protected from this kind of scams.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say, my fear, I totally agree with you. I would totally love in the United States if all the social media platforms had to run. Siwei has created a tool called Deepfakeometer that actually runs many different types of tests that you can run against anything you suspect. I would love to see all the social media platforms have to just run anything you upload has to go through that filter. And if it comes back tampered with, it gets a watermark across it that says, this has been tampered with. However, what I believe in, correct me if I'm wrong, Siwei, earlier you said your tests are about 80% accurate.
Right.
80%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my fear is that people to put too much confidence then in that watermark, and the 20% that get through, we then absolutely put faith in, because it's an arms race.
Right.
So every time the media forensics folks comes up with a new way to analyze it and spot what's wrong, the bad guys go, oh, and they fix it.
Yes.
So I don't want people. So I think they're always gonna need that last little. If it's, again, every time, if it's an amusing video and it's just like, haha, that made me laugh, I may get irritated that it wasn't real, but it didn't cost me money. But anytime it's costing me information or money, I think we always want people unfortunately, the world we live in, you're going to have to check it out.
Yeah.
This seems like a good moment for the Cervantes specialist to chime in again.
There you go. Excellent.
Because we went through this problem before. When print first came about, the print technology took over, and mass mass media, like originally mass theater, we had to deal, our ancestors had to deal with the new technologies in ways that are similar to the way we are dealing with digital media today. So, when we think about, for example, the world of 16th and 17th century Europe, there were a lot of print materials there that today would fall under the category of yellow journalism. Fake articles, fake materials that were meant to manipulate. At the same time, even say nation states, Spain is a prime culprit of this, used the new technology, both print but also the mass theater, to promote propagandistic views of the monarchy in ways that manipulated the public. I'm not going to get into details, but so the issue, I guess what the point I would want to make is that while these new technologies we're dealing with in our digital media age are awesome, and the potential for manipulation has increased due to the speed with which information can be transmitted today and the volume of media that is produced every second. The fact is that we have been dealing with issues related to new media arising that provided similar conundrums to us, and we learned how to deal with it. So an example I would provide, Meta, is that you can have a video made by AI that actually is useful in educating people about a particular problem, say climate change, if it's used the right way. At the same time, you could use truthful images and edit them maliciously and frame them to manipulate people. So you can actually lie with truthful images, and you can actually educate with manipulated images. The question is, what are we doing with these images? What's the goal here, and whether or not we are equipped, meaning the larger public here, to ask the right questions, such as who benefits from me believing this? Questions like that, or questions such as the questions that Cynthia was suggesting earlier. Does it even make sense that my grandkid has never sent me a video before asking for money? All my communications with my grandson have been over the phone, for example. Does it even make sense that he makes a video call now? So just asking that second degree is like awareness. I think we can't just give up the fort and think that we are going to be able to trust detection tools to safeguard our privacy and our well-being, financial well-being and otherwise. We can't trust these tools to do that for us. We have to take responsibility in the same way that we have been in the past taking responsibility for interpreting reality in ways that are critical.
No, I don't think you can put it that much on us. I mean, as a user, I cannot do all of those things that you want me to look at. How many fingers and toes they have. I can't do that. I want an honest charge. Either this is a fake or it's not a fake. Now, then the way it works in law is, yes, you have either you broke the law or you didn't break the law. But when it comes to sentencing, at the end, you're found guilty or not guilty, and then the judge will say, yes, in this case you were guilty, but there's you had a good excuse for what you did. You were actually drunk or feeble-minded or something, or under coercion, and therefore we should not punish you. So we'll give you a suspended sentence or something like that. So we mitigate the punishment given the context. And I think that's realistic. If somebody makes a video that fools people, it's really fooling people, and you shouldn't do it unless you label it a fake. But then when it comes, you should prosecute people for doing it. But when it comes to punishing them, there may very well be circumstances in which you say, well, that was actually a good thing to do, not a bad thing. So we should give them a medal instead of sending them to jail. Okay, that here's my absolutist mentality showing through. But I really,
Can I add
yeah,
something to that? Yeah, because actually, it's I would say I would like to talk about broader issue related not just individual, I would say, protection from deepfakes and this kind of stuff, but because it's technology, AI, as well as deepfakes, they can change our culture and our, I would say, norms between our norms of relationship between us. It's, for example, if we should be suspicious on any action, any image, any sentence that we have in cyberspace, we should turn our culture a kind of police culture, that we should be I would say, folk police people and do some police stuff. At the same time, I would say that we should develop new tools how to deal with that built in culture. And I would say significant part of it, it's a problem of trust. Because it's my point that problem of trust we should apply to the human beings, not to AI. And I don't like when term trust to AI, trust to technology, as well as trust to this chair. Even in case of agentic AI, we have a kind of principle of this or that agent, AI agent, and responsible should be passed to this principle, but not most of it, but not to the agent. And this is an issue, a problem with AI and with technology, how we should use it. Not trust or distrust the real problem, how we should use it and do not harm our relationship, do not harm our trust, yeah, but I would say require trust-generated technology. At the end of the day, what we should address to the, I would say, developers of this technology, in cooperation with others, of course, to develop trust-generated technology that potentially couldn't be harm to our culture, to our relationship based on trust, to keep the trust, and to develop some tools for reasonable doubt. Because as obviously, sometimes trust, I would say, generates a lot of problems, right? So therefore, we should develop some tools for reasonable doubt, how to challenge this or that image or this, and how to deal with this or that situation. Of course, it's a problem maybe more for the young part of society, because it's easier for them to, I would say, to accept new norms. However, I think all society should be have some benefits from this approach.
I do too.
So,
I wholeheartedly agree with that, Leon. In fact, I would take it farther and again, offering the wider frame, going back to the notion of doubt as an essential process in education, in our formative experience. Inertia is one of the strongest forces in the universe. And breaking inertia is very difficult. I am a firm believer that we cannot find freedom if we are not willing to insert doubt into the inertia of our lives, whether we're talking about education as a process or our own, the building of our own subjectivity. So it's important to ask ourselves questions, but those questions that, and this is the other part of what I want to talk about, is that we need, as you say, Leon, we need to find ways to make sure that we engage these technologies in ways that benefit humanity. How do we do that? This is another initiative that we are trying out. We are the current year in our center is developed around the notion of building an AI conscience. How do we do that? So this is how do we build ethics into our AI use, but how do we even entertain the possibility that our AI tools could have a conscience, however we define that. So right now, for example, they don't feel empathy. AIs don't feel empathy, but they don't feel a sense of responsibility either. They don't feel shame, right? They don't feel a need to explain themselves. So we need to push them in those directions. We need to push them in the direction of internally being able to feel something close to responsibility. If we don't do that, we will continue to have sycophantic AIs that simply tell us.
It's a great point. But of course, I agree, David. It's a great point, and maybe it would be a good idea to identify 2 or 3 basic emotions that should be built in this technology. Because definitely we cannot expect that all emotional, I would say, universe that mankind or people have should be, I would say, replicated in AI. But maybe 2 or 3 most important for this problem of, I would say, trust and crime and this kind of deceit and this kind of stuff. Because I would like to even strengthen your point. Because AI, it's one of the technology, and as any new technology, it generates uncertainty in terms of sociology anomia. And the reasonable strategy in the environment of uncertainty is a reasonable doubt. How you can, I would say, mitigate it and to reduce it. When you, later on, when we develop appropriate cultural tools how to deal with that, the uncertainty will be reduced, as it was with the print technology, as in your example. Yeah, but for this we should develop appropriate cultural tools to deal with that. Otherwise, and these tools should be built in this technology, as well as known for us. And kids should be educated about that, and adults should be educated how to use these tools.
I want to go back to something David said about the importance of pre-bunking, and I think this connects to what Leonid was just saying. And I like which is cultural tools, and I think they have to be human culture, not just in the technology. In the importance of pre-bunking, I want to point out, going back to David's specialty, the beginning of print media. There are some very early forgeries that are still wreaking havoc in the world today.
Yes.
They've been thoroughly debunked for centuries, and I'm thinking Protocols of the Elders of
Yes.
Zion for one.
That's right.
They're
Yes.
absolutely debunked. They were debunked at the time. They've been debunked for centuries, and people still are acting as if, some people, a few people, are still acting on them as if they were real, which is why we need the pre-bunking. We need to get out ahead of it so people go, does this even make sense? How can I check it out? If it's important, if it's something that you're going to base your actions on. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys. I would love to, I really do hope we can get back together because it's so important. Thank you very, very much.